there's a lot of shaming women who announce pregnancies too early. And what if she miscarries? And, you know, it puts this expectation that women are supposed to suffer with fertility alone, that we shouldn't all hear about it.
Yeah.
Every time a woman announces a pregnancy early online, the comments are filled with, shouldn't you wait till you hit 12 weeks? It's like, for me, I'm dedicated to the story, you know, on TikTok. So if I had a miscarriage or a failed transfer or anything had gone wrong in that, I'm still documenting the process.
It's still your story.
It's still my story, and I've decided to share it, and we're all going to go through this together. Even if you don't want to hear it, scroll again, block me, whatever. But we're all going to hear it because I've decided I'm going to talk about it.
Guardian gang.
It is Guardian gang.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, you know what sounds cute? Guardian gang. Like, I never heard it
You
before.
just want to take my idea.
No, Guardian gang is cute.
I think it's cute. So, like, you guys are now our guardian gang, which I feel like is, like, the perfect word. Because, like, not everyone who's listening to this is going to be a parent. But, like, you're our kids' guardians.
Totally.
Right? You're not technically our kids' parents, but you're someone there. There's someone I feel like is very heavily, like, you influence our kids. Heavily influence them, and you're there supporting them in many ways that, like, my husband and I sometimes may lack, and not in a way that I feel like is in a bad way. I think we should have this, like, community of people that our children can feel comfortable going to in any way, and, like, and we also know that you are technically my kids' guardians, and so I was like, you know what, something
cute name.
It's so cute, and I love the gang sign.
Okay, we love gang signs, Gina, and as someone who, like, isn't a parent myself and is in more of that role, but when I think about someone who could be listening that isn't a godparent either, or isn't, like, anytime you're interacting with the next generation of little people, you're the guardian of that moment, that interaction, that mentorship. Like, you still have a little piece of them becoming who they are, even if you're not, like, a legal guardian or technically full-time in that child's life. Every person out in the world, a teacher is a guardian for the class period, whatever. And so it just kind of is, it invokes, now that I'm, like, not being judgmental of it, it invokes a sense of, like, we all are. I'm gonna just stop. Just stop.
I mean, you already know who I am. You know I was gonna be like this. But
it's a good name. We'll just end it there. It's a good name. It's cute.
Oh my goodness. And so I'm really excited because we're introducing this new, I guess, segment where I get to tell you something that's happening in pop culture. And I'm so excited. And then for this last segment, which you guys will see at the end of this video or end of this listening at the end of this, you'll hear the segment where Courtney is telling me something. You go ahead and you tell them. That I guess you'll be explaining, like, new...
It's like something I've come across that is interesting to me, factually based, research, a book that I've read, someone else's work that I really admire, that I found informative, or, like, key takeaways that relate to the topic that we're going to be discussing. So what's something tangible? What's maybe, like, a challenge that we can do, all of our guardian gangs? All of our people, that kind of relates to, so what does that mean? Now what? Or where can I go to find more information?
And I think this will be a great way to kind of, like, have the fun of, like, listening to a podcast and getting to know us, but also learning something that we can take away from it and then, like, implement in our lives and with our children. At least, I hope. But I'm hoping you guardian gangs are going to love this part of our segments. But I'm really excited to share what I have with you because I was so excited when I heard it. I was like, I wonder what Courtney would think about this.
I have no idea what you're going to say.
So the United Kingdom TikTok official page posted a comment on Duolingo's page saying that they deleted the Duolingo app. And Duolingo responded back and said, "It's good for you to learn languages, colonizer."
Duolingo. That is so fire. They're coming on so hot. Oh my gosh.
Whoever is the social media manager for Duolingo, give him a raise.
Oh my gosh.
I thought it was freaking hilarious. Like, to the point where I'm like, ah! Like, I will even we'll show up the comment right here. I was shocked.
That's amazing.
Amazing. Which, I mean, the fact that someone on the United Kingdom. I don't even know if it's officially the United Kingdom official like TikTok page. So I will preface that because you can't find the comment anymore. It's deleted, which I'm saddened about because I thought that comment was fire. You can't find it anymore. But I think that's so rude. Like I didn't even like. I felt like in a way I was like, I don't know if they were just taking a jab, like a joke at Duolingo, which might have been it, but it felt like not like that.
And Duolingo clapped back so hard. It was like, okay, we don't even need you. Actually, y'all need us because you don't have enough languages up in there.
Have you ever used Duolingo?
Yes.
It's so, I feel pressure. I haven't used it in a long time, but like they send reminders like, you haven't been on.
It is like pressure. Yeah. I like it. And they have awesome comebacks, apparently.
Have you ever been on? I need to show you their TikTok page.
Oh, I should go on. It kind of reminds me for all that. Wasn't there something between like Wendy's and
McDonald's and something like that?
or Burger King or something? It was
like
they
used to have like their when you would drive by, if you would have like a Wendy's, a McDonald's, and like a Burger King like really close, like you can like drive through. Like it'd be like a little triangle,
like a little pod.
Yeah, and they would have their signs right outside their store, like those big signs. They would have little
messages
comebacks
to each other,
and they got really big because people like the humor, and then it's great marketing, right? Because it's something harmless.
Yeah,
it's kind of like
and
that.
Like tweets or something from a long time ago. They used to like call each other out.
Yes.
It feels like that when someone's official brand is like a single person with a good sense of humor is the one like running the account. I know it's not that, but I'm like, it's kind of makes the brand more relatable. It's funny. Yeah. I'm a big fan.
Well, I'm really excited to introduce our guest, Autumn, and I found her on TikTok was a couple years ago. She was at the time, she was not a mom, but she wanted to become a mom. And she worked at Starbucks just for the insurance so they could get IVF. And I thought that was amazing. And now she is going through the process again, and she's sharing it online to help other moms or other people just understand the process of IVF so that they can just be more knowledgeable about like what's going on in our bodies. Because I think we could all relate. Sometimes doctors are not the best people to fully explain it in a way that we can truly understand.
Yeah, like break it down for us. And so today we're going to be discussing what led her to IVF, right? Her background with it, and then also just what is it from like layman's viewpoint, and also someone who's experienced it, some of the pros and cons, the challenges, how to get through it, and what the experience was like for her and how she paid for it.
Yeah.
So hopefully it's just a relatable, enlightening conversation about alternatives to bringing a child into the world.
So silly.
It's so Gina. I just feel like that's something you would do. Like, here I am, Drew left me. I'm a single parent.
We have a very unserious home.
Those are the best homes to be in. When it's like you can feel the laughter and the love, and like you just want to be there because you just feel like you're just going to be, you're going to leave just smiling, just like feeling very lighthearted. Those are the best homes to be in.
You can just be yourself. Yeah.
So, Autumn, can you tell us more about yourself? Because I know how I found you, but like how I found you and ended up following you. But I know a lot of our followers may not know, and would love to. I would love for them to know a little bit more about you.
So I struggled to get pregnant initially, and then I had 2 pregnancy losses. And after those 2 losses, I knew that IVF was our best option going forward, but it is just so expensive. It is $30,000 cash money in a lump sum. If you don't have it, you don't get to do it. And going into that much debt didn't feel like a good option for me. So I looked into ways that we could make IVF possible for us. And what I found was that if you got a part-time job at Starbucks, you could enroll in their health insurance benefits, working only 20 hours a week at the time. And so I got a job at Starbucks, and I worked for a couple months to gain benefit eligibility. And that is how I afforded IVF. I got the Starbucks health insurance, and we made it happen that way. And I documented this process all on TikTok, and I started gaining a lot of notoriety. I got picked up by various news organizations. I've spoken to NBC News about this several times, and it just kept going and growing. And so now I have my son from my first round of IVF, And I'm 11 weeks pregnant with my second round.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congrats.
And that's a really big deal. Like, before I ask my first, did Starbucks ever change their policy after you?
No, and you know what? From the very beginning, when I interviewed at Starbucks, I told them that I didn't tell them that I wanted to get pregnant because I know that pregnancy discrimination is very real. And I didn't know them. I didn't know how they would handle that. But I did tell them I wanted to enroll for health insurance benefits. And they said, like, that's really common at Starbucks, actually. Wow. There was a woman who worked at my Starbucks for a time who was a professional concert violinist. And her job didn't offer health insurance. So she got a part-time job at Starbucks for health insurance too. So this is not uncommon. Once I started, I talked to my manager and bonded with her over my like infertility experience. And she had gone through fertility treatments previously as well. And so they were just very understanding and supportive. In infertility communities, it's not uncommon for people to go seek employment for fertility benefits. There are a lot of places who offer it, like Tractor Supply and Target does part-time insurance, Starbucks. So they were familiar with it. You know, they were supportive overall.
So you didn't feel like this weirdness of like, you obviously didn't tell them when you went in, but afterwards when they found out, they were very supportive. So you didn't feel like anybody was like giving you less hours or anything like that. That's awesome.
They gave me time off for my egg retrieval. Like when you do egg retrieval, it's you go under anesthesia, they put you under, and it's a surgical procedure. I don't think it's considered full surgery, but it's painful, and there's a little recovery period after. They gave me a full week off work afterwards. Wow. Anytime I had an appointment, they made sure that I could work my hours around it. Like, they were really cooperative with me.
Which is completely different from what we hear from other corporations.
Yes.
Because I feel like a lot of them are like, that's not our problem. Work around you make your appointments around your days off, or like get fired, figure it out.
And you know, in the egg retrieval process of IVF, you have to go into appointments every other day. Like, you have an ultrasound every other day. This is for 2 weeks, every other day. And as it gets closer to procedure date, it's, you know, you may be going every single day, and you don't know the date of your procedure until a day or two before, because it's based off of how your body is responding to the meds. So you really can't plan IVF around a job. Like, the job has to work around IVF, which is really difficult for a lot of people.
Okay, so wait, logistically, walk us through from the get-go. So it's like IVF, I'm going to decide this option for conception. What is the first step? Where do you go once you've kind of said, I want to do IVF?
I also want to mention, like, anyone who's listening in, I feel like you explain it in a way that all moms... No. I'm married to a nurse. This is not something, like, I have not gone through the process, but I've, like, hear a lot of these from, like, other medical professionals. You explain it in such a way that not only do you make it easier for someone who's never been through it, but I also see other moms in your comments who are like, I went through this. I didn't even know why. Like, you just explained something to me. So I love the way that you explain things, because you make it so palatable for everyone, no matter where they're at with their knowledge, that they are understanding what you've been through.
Thank you. I really feel like a lot of medical professionals do not do a good job of dumbing things down to a level where we can understand them. And I was fortunate to have some nurses who would really go the extra mile to explain things to me. I did a lot of research my own self. But so what happens is, when you go to your fertility clinic, let's say you want to do IVF, you do a bunch of initial blood work. And then when your IVF starts, there's two parts. There's an egg retrieval part and an embryo transfer part. So in the egg retrieval part, you're actually working to create embryos that you can transfer in the future. So you go in for a baseline ultrasound where they look at your ovaries, and they're counting the number of follicles on all of your ovaries, on both ovaries. And follicles grow in a normal period cycle. I'll use myself as an example. I started with 19 follicles on my ovaries. In a normal period cycle, your follicles grow over the first 2 weeks of your cycle, but one grows faster than all of the other ones, and it takes the lead, and that follicle will pop and ovulate an egg out of it. But all of those other 18 follicles that contain the starts to an egg, they just kind of go to waste. So what you do in IVF is instead of allowing those other 18 follicles to go to waste, they give you stims, which are medications to stimulate your ovaries to grow. And they pump you full of hormones to cause hopefully, all of your follicles to grow at the same rate so that
they're all developing eggs.
So they're all developing eggs. And they're also giving you injections to stop you from ovulating. So you're allowing them to grow and grow and grow. And what happened for me is 7 of my follicles grew at a faster rate and 12 grew at like a slower rate. So when those 7 reached what looked like a maturity level, then they give you a shot it's called a trigger shot to make you ovulate. And 36 hours later, they do your procedure.
The retrieval.
Okay. So in that retrieval process, they put you under, and with an ultrasound wand that has like a big needle on the side of it, they go through your vaginal wall and they suction out eggs out of every single one of your mature looking follicles.
Wow. So was this the 7 mature eggs, was that from one particular ovary or was that from both ovaries?
Both ovaries.
Okay.
Yeah. So for me, they were able to suction out 7 eggs. All 7 were mature, which is fortunate. Usually there's a little bit of a drop off. Like you get the number of eggs they got, then about 25% or so will fall off and you'll have your number of mature eggs. While you're in your procedure, your partner is depositing sperm or bringing sperm in. And so as soon as your procedure is done, it goes to an embryologist. And in my case, we did a procedure called ICSI. So they picked good looking sperm and they injected 1 sperm into each of my mature eggs. So out of my 7 mature eggs, 4 successfully fertilized. And then they let those grow in a petri dish for 5 days, hoping that they reach the stage of an embryo.
Wow. Okay. So
I know it's a lot.
I think, and just hearing it broken down like that is so helpful. Because I'm loosely familiar with IVF. IVF is like on my radar potentially in the future.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I've ever heard someone in 2 minutes just walk through like what you can expect and what exactly is happening and why. And so when you see all those like in a picture of a baby that's an IVF baby with all the shots all around, are those, at what stage of the IVF journey are you like consistently taking that many shots? Both. Okay.
Both
and for what? What are they doing?
So those stimulating medications, the stims, those are daily injections that you're taking. They're injections around your belly. But then, so I ended up getting, out of my 4 successfully fertilized eggs, 1 did not continue to grow. So after 5 days, I had 3 left. We sent those off to genetic testing to count to make sure they have the 46 chromosomes that a healthy person should have. Out of my 3 embryos, I had 1 that was missing a chromosome 18. Mm-hmm. It's called monosomy 18. Mm-hmm. That's not a condition that's compatible with life. Mm-hmm. So we did not use that one.
So maybe your body would have aborted it if you had naturally conceived that child?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, it doesn't mean that you carry a genetic condition or anything. Mm-hmm. That is something we tested for on the front end. My husband and I don't have anything that we could pass on to a child between the 2 of us.
It's just like a mutation.
Abnormality.
Like, yeah.
When an egg splits, it just doesn't do a good job every time. Mm-hmm. I spoke to a genetic counselor and she said if you're under 35, 1 out of every 3 eggs is just not going to split correctly. It's just... It doesn't do a good job every time.
Mm-hmm. Sorry to interrupt,
no, you're
but
fine.
I had a doctor because we had to do genetic testing too after my first miscarriage because I had 2 successful pregnancies and they're like, we don't understand why you've had this miscarriage. And so they did testing on the fetus and then they did testing on both Drew and I. And then what they ended up finding was it was just kind of the same thing. I had gone to 13 weeks. I had had a miscarriage and we found out that there was some mutation or abnormality and there was nothing wrong with Drew and I. We were not passing anything. And my doctor, because I was devastated. I'm like, I must have done something wrong. I ate something wrong, lifted up something. And it's like this, you feel this immense pressure of you feel this guilt and pressure and everything. And she's like, every single baby is honestly on this earth is a miracle. And she's like, I'm not talking about it in a religious like kind of standpoint. I'm just looking at it like everything has to go so right.
Yeah.
It's easier for things to go wrong. Right. And so like, she's like, honestly, it could have happened. Like the chances of it happening to you was really high, but it's also high for anybody because it just happens. Like you said, she said, everything has to like divide and be perfect because if anything goes wrong, then boom.
And you know, because we're born with most of the eggs we have. So even if you're a young person even if you're 16, 17, 18, getting pregnant, those are still kind of old eggs. You know, they've been sitting in your body for a long time. And the doctors advise us, you know, after 35, the rates of like a genetic issue raise because of the age of the eggs. But we're still dealing with it at a decent rate when we're under geriatric pregnancy age. Yeah.
Wait a minute. You're not geriatric.
I am this time.
Oh,
Wow, congrats.
You know what?
I
My
hate
mom
that
had
word.
like half her babies.
I hate that word so much.
When I saw my OB, she said, you know, you're a geriatric pregnancy this time. And I said, kind of joking, I was like, yeah, but to be fair, this is my 32-year-old embryo. Like, this is from when I was 32. She goes, you know what? Actually, technically, you're not geriatric then.
Yeah.
Geriatric really refers to, like, the age of the baby.
Look at that. I learned something new because I thought it was just the age of the woman, but it's the age of the egg.
Yeah.
Wow, I love that. That's something new.
Yeah.
Because you were telling us like those trigger shots. The reason why you have to take them daily is to kind of continue pushing your body to feel like to continue like maturing those eggs. Because as soon as you stop, then they would release on its own after 36 hours. Correct?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then later on, so if you're doing it in the pre-egg retrieval stage, then what does it look like after you had a petri dish of 2 viable embryos? Then where do we go?
So in my case, they do the genetic testing, and when they do that, they pinch off. At 5 days old, your embryo has about 100 cells. So they pinch off 5 to 10 cells to send off for genetic testing. And these are not cells of the baby, they're cells of the placenta. And so they're able to see if everything has the right number of chromosomes. And at that time, if you want to know, because they're looking at the chromosomes, they can see if you have XY, XX, if it's a boy or a girl.
Gender. Wow.
Because they're also scanning for things like Turner syndrome, which would be an extra X chromosome, you know? But so I had 2 healthy embryos. So basically those stay frozen until you're ready to do a transfer cycle. You can leave those frozen for years, or you can jump into it right away. So I jumped into it right away with one of my frozen embryos.
Which we now have.
Which I now have a 14-month-old.
Wow. So adorable.
Who is wild, and it's crazy. I have pictures of him as just the cells. You know?
Can we put that up? I want to put
I'll send you an email
I want
with
to
the picture.
see baby Lordy as like a baby,
A clump of cells?
I know, a clump
Yeah.
of cells to where he's at right now. Because he is an adorable chunky baby.
Thank you.
He is a baby. I know moms will understand. I try to explain this to dudes and like they just don't get it. But he is a baby that I would like to bite.
Nibble.
Yes.
And nibble. Like he is so cute and chunky, and those roll. I love.
He's so tall.
Yes,
So
he's really.
cute.
Right now, what size is he wearing? This is like just mom talk right now.
He's 14 months old, and he is pushing the limits of 18-month clothes. Like, he's wearing 2T in 18 months. He's just a big kid.
Love it. I love babies who are just trying. I could talk about this all day.
They're like nibbleable babies.
I know
Yeah.
someone's gonna be like, Gina, you can't say stuff like that. That is just like a primitive thing, or you just you love your
Eat
baby.
your child. It's normal. It's totally not primitive. We've been doing this
isn't
since
normal.
the dawn of time.
But like some babies are just nibbleable because they're just. I love cuddle. I love babies. Obviously, why I have so many, but it's not just babies. I love kids, but just some kids are just a little bit more nibbleable than others. I'm gonna stop. Let's go on. So from there, you, I guess, transferred. Lordy.
So then the transfer cycle starts, and so in a naturally conceived pregnancy with no doctors involved, that ovary where you ovulate out of, that burst follicle, you get a cyst there. And that cyst provides your body with all of the hormones it needs to support a pregnancy until the placenta grows enough and takes over.
Wow.
But so with IVF, you don't have that. So you have to artificially create this hormone environment for yourself. So you have to inject yourself with progesterone, and you also take estrogen, which is not an injection, but you take estrogen as well, leading up to the embryo transfer and then through about 10 weeks of pregnancy. I just finished my last progesterone injection yesterday.
They're horrible. Those projections are
I've been doing
horrible.
them 10 weeks every single day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, congrats.
Thank you.
Getting off that progesterone is like, it's a load. Like it feels so, you feel so different. You can like you can actually notably see the difference when you're on progesterone and then when you're off, because you're at least for me, I felt like my mind was always racing. I felt like my chest, my boobs hurt a lot. Felt so tired. How did you feel on them?
Well, and progesterone is the hormone that causes morning sickness. So then even before I'm pregnant, in the weeks leading up to transfer, I'm getting nauseous and sick from the progesterone. And you know, you do a lot of injections in IVF, but most of them are a small amount of medicine. The progesterone is
Like a full syringe.
a lot. It's a lot of medicine to inject into you. So you get like lumps and it clumps up and it's just really uncomfortable.
This is like the side of IVF I've never heard. And I have so many friends. I have a couple family members. I've personally, like I said, looked into it. Never am I hearing about what it feels like, the daily details, the like number of shots. Besides literally like a picture of the baby laying in the shots if someone chooses to do that. Like that is my only conception, but I'm like, how fascinating for you to say this is like my daily life. Did you have someone help you do the shots? Did you do them yourself? Like what did that look like for you?
So for the egg retrieval, I did most of the shots myself because they're in your belly. But in the progesterone, you do it at the top back of your butt. Wow. So it's behind you. So my husband did all of those. I've never done one myself, which a lot of women do have to do themselves.
Sure.
Like, and they have to figure it out.
Yeah. Wow. And then you have regular ultrasound appointments also as a part of IVF, right? Versus like a normal, not normal, a pregnancy that was like sans IVF. So just conceived.
Yeah.
What is this called? Natural. It's not natural. That's not
unassisted.
Yeah,
is like the respectful.
Thank you. I was like,
way.
natural, normal are not what
That's
I'm
the first time
thinking.
I heard that.
Unassisted
Yeah,
pregnancy.
unassisted.
Okay.
And so
We tend to say natural just because people understand, but
yeah,
you
it
don't
feels-
want to call your kid
unassisted.
unnatural.
It feels
you know?
kind of like a little, like, yeah, a little shady to be like my unnatural birth. An unassisted birth, then I feel like the ultrasounds are more spread out. So you're sharing with us that the ultrasounds are more frequent. Is that required? What does that look like?
So because you get a lot of monitoring with IVF, and I think part of it is partially because you're paying just so much money, you know? So on the day of transfer, at my clinic, you have to wait 12 days to do a pregnancy blood draw. At home, you can take pregnancy tests. You can get a positive test as early as 4 days after your embryo transfer, which is how on my first IVF, I got a positive 4 days after transfer.
Wow.
I was so excited. This time around, I didn't get a positive pregnancy test till 6 days past transfer. So I was like really sweating, like thinking it didn't work.
But you did this really cool thing that I feel like a lot of moms who have been through miscarriages or have gone through IVF, and we were connecting on this. You did like, it's a little bit embarrassing, but it's just something that we do. The progression pregnancy test.
Yes.
Where you see it get darker and darker and darker. And so you know that the pregnancy is kind of like
Progressing well.
Yes. Because your numbers are supposed to double. And you can kind of see, like, if you get
concentration.
Yes, the concentration of your HCG levels. And it would just be darker and darker and darker. And so you kind of line them all up. If you've done what we've done, go ahead.
Because if you've had a loss before, or I've had an ectopic before, where the lines get darker, but not really. They just stay light, and it means your pregnancy is not progressing in a healthy way. Or they could get darker and then get lighter, and that could mean you had a chemical pregnancy, which just means you were pregnant, but you didn't make it to an ultrasound. You were only able to verify it via chemicals, you know. But so at my clinic, we do a blood test 12 days after transfer. And then you do another blood test like every other day for 3 in a row to make sure your numbers are doubling appropriately. And then you get an ultrasound at 5.5 weeks, 6.5 weeks, and 7.5 weeks.
Okay.
And at which point after that, you get to graduate to go back to your OB.
Okay. And then you follow a more traditional ultrasound. Okay. Path.
Because in an unassisted pregnancy, at least where I am, I know this is a little bit different depending on your state and your hospital system, but where I am in an unassisted pregnancy, they don't see you at all until 8 weeks, until you're 8 weeks pregnant, where you think you're 8 weeks pregnant.
Wow.
And then they bring you in because really there's not a whole lot doctors can do if a pregnancy is not progressing, you know, so they don't bring you in just to be checking.
Wow. This is fascinating.
I'm like excited for you because you're
so
like
fascinating. I'll tell a brief synopsis of kind of what led me to even look into it. Fertility and hormones for me have always been like on my radar because I have had irregular periods since I was a teenager. So I had really, really, really heavy when I first started my cycle, and then like whatever that's called, a monorrhea or something that I'm forgetting.
Oh, yeah.
It's like
where you
spotty
don't have
hidden missed periods. Exactly. Yeah. Like I'll go for months without one. And so I've always had that. And when I reached 24, I was like, okay, I'd like to at least get like my hormones checked. So I did an at-home fertility testing, and it came back all pretty good. So it was like, you probably have likely egg reserves, like average for your age, probably they're healthy eggs. Everything looked fine. And so then I kind of tabled it for the next few years, still had irregular periods, still was a little unsure what was going on. It was only when I gained significant weight in a short amount of period that I was like, a short amount of time, and was having irregular cycles, that I was like, something just feels so off. I don't know what it is, but it's not quite right. And I'm interested in potentially having kids down the road. So we're reaching this age as we got like late 20s that was like, maybe we should just both get full like fertility testing done.
Yeah.
And so after having gotten that done is when meeting with my gynecologist, she was like, oh, you have, you know, cysts on your ovaries. I had gotten an ultrasound. She's like, I'll diagnose you with PCOS because you have missed periods, insulin resistance, and cyst on your ovaries. So those 3 things are enough for the diagnosis. And so from there, she was like, I'll just, from here, your option is to take birth control, and I'll refer you to a fertility specialist. And I was like, that's the end of the conversation. And she was like, yeah, there's no solution for PCOS. I have no real information for you. Best of luck. And, you know, it was like a 10-minute conversation where I received the news that my body doesn't ever ovulate. I don't have any progesterone. Like, so my hormones are way off. I have way higher cortisol and stress because I don't have progesterone. There's a lot going on there that it just didn't feel like anyone walked me through, and I didn't have any solutions. There was no like way to move forward. It was just kind of like, I guess, you know, and now if you'd like to have a child, your option is IVF, and good luck, go find a new doctor. And I was like, all right, thank you.
I think not just in women's health, in health in general, a lot of times doctors only treat the symptom and don't always get to the root cause.
Yeah.
But you really see it in women's health with fertility in that there's no treatments for endometriosis or PCOS. It's like, well, we can get you pregnant. But if you don't want to be pregnant, I mean, that just is what it is.
Good luck. Sorry. Yeah, you don't have, in the way that it impacts your life, it's only relevant if you're talking about having a child, and that's still a conversation between my spouse and I. And so if it's only being narrowed down to, are you having a child or not, is the only way that we're going to move forward with options. What about my hormone health in the meantime? What about my well-being in the meantime? Being fertile is a large component of women's health, not just ability to conceive a child. Fertility is an indicator of just your personal well-being. And none of that was explained to me or walked through. And I've done so much research over the last year or two to educate myself. What is progesterone? Where does it come from? How does one boost progesterone? How do different, foods and lifestyles impact these things? What does it mean to be insulin resistant? How should my diet be changing accordingly? And just kind of self-led. And it's intimidating. And to not have someone to even sit down and say, if you were to do IVF, what does that process even mean or look like? It's like a word of mouth process, friend to friend, versus like, I didn't feel my medical provider walked me through that in a very cohesive, comforting way.
That's one of the reasons I talk about it so much, is I didn't have an understanding, and I was very scared of it when I was going into it. I was really terrified because when people do talk about it, and rightfully so, like, women want validation for what they're going through. And a lot of times to get validation, you really can only talk about the really bad parts so that people can sympathize with what you're going through. But so that means you don't have a real accurate picture of what IVF looks like. And for me, I share a lot because IVF was a lot, I don't want to say easier, but it was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. Like, it wasn't as difficult, even with all the appointments and all of the mental load it takes, because you have to deal with a lot with your insurance companies and making sure you have the medicines arriving to you at the right time because they have to be shipped out from other places. With everything that goes into it, it was still easier than I had perceived it to be.
Because no one walked you through it. It was like just you kind of picking up little snippets and trying to piece together. And I feel like that's always, the unknown of that is always more intimidating than just someone saying, here's exactly what it's going to look like. And maybe a good provider does. And I haven't made it to the step of meeting with a fertility specialist. Maybe they would be incredible. But just all I do know is from the gynecologist perspective, like the lack of wraparound support, the lack of education in that area. I think a lot of women that are having, I'm missing a period, I have really heavy periods, I have a lot of pain, I have whatever, it's going undiagnosed, misdiagnosed, not communicated well about what your options are. Yeah. And that's so unfortunate.
Well, I think, I mean, if you look at it this way, it is a little bit more difficult than an unassisted conception. Oh, for sure. Right? But because you never got a true indication from anyone, because it does look like a lot. It is a lot.
It is a lot.
Let's be like, it is a lot. But for you, you're like, this is getting me to something that I really, really want. Once you got all the information, you had the knowledge, it became easier, right? Yeah. You didn't feel super lost. But that's, I think, maybe the thing that we can all agree is that a lot of these doctors are not explaining things. So then it becomes that mental load of just like, I don't know what to do. I don't know. Stress makes it a lot more difficult than it needs to be. And so if we were to be able to have people explain things in a way that makes it like dumb it down, I don't care, dumb it down, then it would be a lot easier so that more women can have, or more people who are looking to go into IVF would be able to have the experience that you had, because it should be like that.
Some of these things that sound terrible, like shots every day for 10 weeks, it becomes so routine, and to a degree, it's similar to pregnancy or parenthood even, where you could not go back to your pre-mother self and explain the hardest parts of motherhood or like what it truly means to be a mom. I think to a degree, you can't explain what it's like to go through IVF. But what I do like to say is that it's about 30% as hard as what I thought it was going to be. Because it just becomes so routine. Yes, you have to go to the doctors a lot. Yes, you have to do a lot of shots. Yes, you have to call the insurance company every single day and make sure your meds are coming, But that all of that just becomes a part of your life. Like, we're all so resilient and adaptable that it just becomes a part of our everyday.
I couldn't agree more. I feel like it's the same for if you receive a diagnosis of being diabetic.
Yeah.
Like, you're just kind of like, okay, is this overwhelming on the front end? Yes. Do I have like trepidation or wish someone could walk me through what this is going to look like? Yes. But eventually, do just the routines that come with taking care of my health become just that, a routine?
Yeah.
Yes. And does it feel more manageable 6 months in? Yeah.
Like, I know someone who had to go dairy-free for her breastfeeding child. And it was hard at first, and then she went dairy-free for 3 years. Wow. And it just, to me, when I was pregnant, one of my biggest fears was gestational diabetes. Because it just seemed like a load to carry.
From personal experience, like you said, you make it through. I remember my cheat days where I would eat like perfect 6 days, and then my doctor's like, allow yourself to have one day so that you're not messing yourself on the other days. And I would get duck donuts, and knowing that I would crash, I'd eat like 2 duck donuts. I'm like, all right, peace out, guys. I'm going to go take a nap. I'm about to go crash. But I was able to not only eat the right way, I was able to have an 8-pound, 3-ounce baby, right? I was able to go to 40 weeks, which my doctor, my OB or the nurse practitioner did not want to let me go. And my specialist was like, her numbers are doing great. Like her blood sugar numbers, the baby's growing beautifully. They're not over, I guess not oversized, but he wasn't overweight or anything. Yeah. And so she's like, based on her numbers, not what we do for all gestational, like pregnancy women, her numbers are great. She can go to 40 weeks. And so because I was able to have the knowledge, I had a husband who was able to help me with like figuring out what the numbers, where they need to be, like you said, it became part of my daily life. And even now where I know I'm diabetic now, I'm just kind of like, okay, well, I know what to do. And like, it's part of my everyday life. I'm eating more higher protein, less carbs. I'm making sure I'm taking walks after meals when I can. And like, now I just know it's just part of my everyday life. Alrighty. So I know with IVF, like you said, you have a lot of ultrasounds, you have a lot of doctor's appointments. What was your support system like going through the whole process? Like, did you have family members helping you? Did you have other women that you could just talk to about the whole process?
So like the first time around, I needed emotional support, but not so much logistical support, because it was just me and my husband. My husband has never missed an appointment. Until this time around, he had to miss a couple because he had the baby, Yeah. Mm-hmm. But this time, this IVF round, and especially now that I'm pregnant and I have to get extra ultrasounds and I see a high-risk doctor, you can take a child to your OB's office, but you can't take a child to the high-risk doctor. They don't allow it. They don't allow anyone under 14. So in those cases, I am just extremely blessed that we live near both of our families. My mom is a public school teacher, and she has been banking sick days in anticipation of me having children for years. She has over 200 sick days. So every single time I need an appointment, she takes a day off. Wow. And she takes my son and watches him for my appointment. Like, I have a really extensive support system that I'm like extraordinarily grateful for.
I'm so jealous.
That's amazing.
That is amazing. And it's how it should be. Not everyone has it, but I am so grateful that you have that, because it is really hard. And just gonna be like up front, I am so jealous because it's not like that for everyone.
No,
so just to hear that, like, it makes me happy for you. It makes me happy for you.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. We're really, both of our families, we come from the same general, like, we're both from Metro Detroit. There's no other kids on my side of the family, but like his brothers and sisters have kids. So it's like anytime anyone needs a babysitter, we all have this like big extensive network to tap into. It's really, I lived in Atlanta for a few years, for 5 years with my husband. And I wanted to move back to Detroit before we had children because of our support system. Yeah. And I knew that having kids, I wanted to be near our families.
So how do you feel like, what could friends and family do to support someone who's going through IVF?
You know what? This is so tough because now that I talk openly about IVF on the internet, I run into women like locally. I run into women at Target who come up to me and say, oh my God, I see your TikToks. I'm having a transfer this week. Nobody in my family knows. I don't talk to anybody about, there's so many women who go through IVF that don't tell anybody.
Yeah, alone.
And I cannot keep a secret to save my life. Like, that could never be me. I have a family group chat.
You're like, listen, y'all, IVF updates daily.
I have a family group chat, especially also because I make TikTok content. I don't ever want the family to find out something important
via social media,
or they find out through somebody. My father-in-law's coworkers watch me on TikTok. And like recently I had said last week that my husband went to urgent care because he's just had this lingering cough for a long time. And his coworkers went to his dad and said, like,
how's your son?
Is he doing okay? And he had no idea. And he called us like, what's going on? Is Gary okay? He was like, yeah, I just went to urgent care and got some antibiotics. Like,
it's getting the information.
No, but in the support system, if you know somebody going through it, especially if you have children or you're pregnant and you're not experiencing the difficulty, I think the best way to approach it is to be humble and grateful for what you have to them, because like they want it so bad, you know? That's like how I would approach it, because a lot of women are not going to be forthcoming about what they're struggling with to people who are not struggling.
Yeah.
Because there's not that relatability there.
I've found whenever I've opened up about something that I'm going through, when I know the person I'm sharing it with has no concept, or it came really easily or naturally for them, it almost hurts worse than just, I'd rather just be alone with myself experiencing what I'm experiencing than the isolation of sharing it with someone and them just being like, I have no idea how to relate. I have no, like, that.
Or they make jokes.
Yeah, or try and lighten it up. But I think
take one of mine.
It's
like,
That's worse.
Yeah, it's like it's a catch-22 though, because on the other end, if you don't share with anyone, you're taking away their opportunity to even think about being sensitive because they have no idea. So then they are making a joke, or they are like, oh my gosh, it was so easy. I can't believe, oopsie, I'm pregnant again. Like, and they just don't know that that's even on your radar. So it's challenging either way, I think, and can be for many people.
Yeah. And what I hear from a lot of women, like in the infertility space, and you know, this is kind of common advice now, is don't ask married couples when they're having kids. Because you don't know if they're trying, you don't know if they're
Heaven
struggling,
help us
or if
all,
they even
please.
want to. Not everyone wants to have a kid. Like, it's tough because it then puts the onus on the struggling person to bring you their struggle, and I don't know that there's a good way yet.
Yeah,
because we all don't talk about it so much.
I think unless we become a society who we're very transparent and open about things, until I feel like we can do that fully, I think we should always respect people to make sure that we're not like stepping on like other people's toes. There was a close friend of mine and her husband, they've been married for a little bit longer than my husband and I. And I was just like, in my mind, I'm like, oh, they're such a cute couple. I cannot wait to see them as parents, but also see their cute babies. And I just said, hey, Hannah, when are you and Bryce are going to have kids? And she's like, that is not an appropriate question to ask. And I'm so glad she put me in my place, because I was able to think like, oh my goodness, that was wrong.
Yeah.
Like, and like, I could have been that person to be really defensive.
What's your problem?
Yeah, what's your problem? Like, whatever. But in reality, I was pushing a button that was really sensitive for her. And like that came out of nowhere. Like, even though like would I say we were super close? Like we are? No. But like I didn't feel like it was a bad question. But does it matter? All it mattered was like that was not an appropriate question to ask her. And she put a boundary, and then I needed to respect that.
There's a lot of shaming women who announce pregnancies too early. And what if she miscarries? And, you know, it puts this expectation that women are supposed to suffer with fertility alone, that we shouldn't all hear about it.
Yeah.
Every time a woman announces a pregnancy early online, the comments are filled with, shouldn't you wait till you hit 12 weeks? It's like, for me, I'm dedicated to the story, you know, on TikTok. So if I had a miscarriage or a failed transfer or anything had gone wrong in that, I'm still documenting the process.
It's still your story.
It's still my story, and I've decided to share it, and we're all going to go through this together. Even if you don't want to hear it, scroll again, block me, whatever. But we're all going to hear it because I've decided I'm going to talk about it.
Well, what is announcing early going to do? It's not going to change the outcome. It's going to be whatever it's going to be.
You just do it alone.
But you're just doing it alone, which is worse, I think.
And, you know, I had a relative who had a 14-week miscarriage, and she hadn't announced her pregnancy yet. And I think, I don't want to speculate to her, but for me, I think it might even be harder to then come out and say, guys, I've been pregnant for the last 3-4 months, and now I'm going through a miscarriage. You know, it's hard either way because no one wants to suffer alone.
I had a 13-week miscarriage, and I think
so few people knew.
And then one other good friend of mine knew, and like it was really, really hard because like my husband would say something, and it would bring me into like a complete meltdown in the most randomest places. And I'm around all these people, and they have no idea what's wrong.
Yes.
And if they had an idea, then it wouldn't look so weird, or I wouldn't be so embarrassed crying in this like middle of this place. And it was just really, really hard because I was supposed to act like nothing happened because to everyone else, nothing had happened. I was just going on my daily life. And it was 13 weeks. So that's like 3 months. And I was in bed, like all I'm thinking about is like just trying to survive each day, trying to keep this baby alive. And then I lose this baby. And then the very next week, I even remember I was so swollen from all the fluids it had given me that I couldn't even move out of bed for like 4 or 5 days. I couldn't even move my ankles, but I was expected to like go back to church, go back and like live my life, bringing my kids to school. And so I'm walking around feeling like this loss, like feeling empty, but everyone else around me has no idea. And it felt weird because at least when you're grieving through something like that's more typical, I guess, losing a family member, losing a mom, that people are a little bit more sensitive with you, or they're just more understanding if you need more time or need someone to talk to. But when they have no idea because you're told that you're not supposed to say anything, then it just feels like you feel kind of lost because you're having to act like nothing's wrong when everything is wrong.
I've lost 2 pregnancies, and I feel like one of the hardest parts is that the world keeps turning and like your world isn't turning anymore. But if everybody knows, it does slow down a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. At least around you.
Yeah. And that was hard. So I'm sorry that you went through that. Yeah, oh my goodness.
I know.
So you have to like what? Yeah. Thank you. I'm gonna pass the box.
Yeah, give me.
Because every single time I think like I'm good now. It's been so long. Like it's really been so long. I think my last miscarriage was like my daughter's 7, 8 years ago. It's been 8 years, and like I feel like I'm good, and it's all these emotions are coming back because I'm remembering being so alone, and it's just because society's like don't tell anybody, and I like hate that rule now, and that's why I'm even announcing like, oh, we may be trying, just because I don't want to be alone this next time around. Like it sucked. I feel like every woman should be able to tell when they're pregnant, when they're ready, and if that's like week 1 because you're trying this week, good for you. And if that's like at week 20 and that's when you want to, good for you. Do it when you want to, because I don't want anyone to have to go through what we had to go through of like losing a baby and that everything is just going normal, and you have to just be stuck with your thoughts, be stuck in this loneliness while everyone's just feeling like I don't know. I just hate it.
And it just feels, for me, reflecting on you saying that, social media platforms amplify the space for people to have big opinions about the way that you're living your life and what you're choosing to do. But that happens off camera as well. That happens in all of our life. And like having this conversation and hearing this from you guys just calls forward for me, like, oh my gosh, the need for grace, like the need for compassion, because whether societally someone's felt that they couldn't share or whatever it may be, like it's just so likely. My favorite thing is that like pie graph where it's like a tiny little sliver and it's like what you see of someone's day and then what you think you know of them, and it's like extended that color of that piece to like their whole life.
Yeah.
You just think you can paint someone and like get them, and you know their motivations, and they're so annoying, and like all of these really unhelpful conclusions and judgments that decontextualize someone's pain, decontextualize someone's experience that probably you just weren't privy to. You just didn't know. Mm-hmm. And now someone's like, oh, Gina always talking about that she's getting ready to have a baby. And is she going to or not? Like, probably that's just like clickbait, right? Yeah. Has no context of, no, I actually just really deep down, one of the hardest chapters of my life was being alone around this very topic, choosing to conceive and not having someone be along for the journey with me. And unless they've heard you speak on that, like, they can draw whatever conclusions they want, but it all strips away the humanity of what you've been through. And I think as humans and as people, I just wish there was a little bit more community. And like, I hope podcasts and conversations like this can bring forward this sense of understanding and compassion for different lived experience than you had. Yeah. Like maybe you don't get it and that's not what happened for you. And maybe even you would do something differently. There is space for all of that. And you can still respect that someone else came to a different conclusion and, you know, didn't have that experience. And I'm sorry for both of you. And I wish, you know, moving forward, I'm glad you're finding community in a more public way for all of their crazies and critique with people that want to hear and that are amplifying your voices and saying, this is comforting to me. This is educational for me. Thank you.
So I handled my pregnancy announcement much different this time. I did the IVF process live, basically, with both pregnancies. But with my first IVF, the day I took my pregnancy test, I told our whole family, and then I told the internet, like all same day, real time. And this time around, my platform, frankly, is a lot bigger. And the first time around, I mostly had a following of people experiencing infertility. And as I gave birth and went through pregnancy and had a baby, my platform grew to a much bigger audience that was no longer this little cocoon of people who had gone through something similar to me. And it was now people who could no longer relate to my experience so much. So I decided to like protect my mental health a little bit, to take a week off from filming live content. I do all my content pretty much in real time. I took a week off. I only posted pre-recorded things for a full week so that I could kind of like sit with this
Beautiful.
in case it didn't work out, and I didn't have to be going through it not working out exactly 100% live, which really worked out for me this time, because the first time around I found out I was pregnant 4 days after transfer. This time I had negatives on day 4, negatives on day 5. I didn't think it worked until I got my positive on day 6. And so having that like peace away from so many opinions, even if it was just a week is not that long in comparison to how long other people wait sometimes. But taking that week for myself was really good for me this time around.
Yeah.
So with going through the process of IVF, do you feel like it's impacted how you parent?
Oh, you know what? I go to therapy, and I have been going to therapy for years.
I love therapy goers. I'm one as well.
I'm a therapy girl. And in experiencing infertility and going through IVF, you get a lot of time to really think about what kind of parent you're going to be and how you want to parent. Now, does all of that stick when you're in real parenting? No. But you do get the opportunity to be like very intentional with the choices that you want to make. And I think that is one silver lining to this whole situation, is parenting didn't catch me by surprise.
Yeah.
You know, it didn't sneak up on me. I planned it. I knew months, this time around, I knew months in advance. December 13th, you are getting pregnant, you know? And it just gives you a lot of time to think.
I like that.
Like someone, go ahead.
No, I was just going to go, you go.
Oh, I was only just going to say that intentionality is like very unique. For all there's pros and cons to every component of IVF versus like conception. What are you saying? No intervention.
Yeah, unassisted.
It's not stuck in my brain.
No, it doesn't.
Unassisted pregnancy. That intentionality is, I think, like a really beautiful piece. Is all I was gonna say.
There are studies on how like there are a lot of LGBTQ families because of the intentional they have to go like to become parents, that they have higher like happier homes maybe, or like they're not happier homes, they're happier parents because of the fact that like this is something that they truly wanted, and they like really were able to think about it, and like I feel like it's the same way maybe, or maybe very similar. It's just the fact that you really, really had to think about whether or not you wanted this. And then you went through that like process. It wasn't by accident.
Yeah.
You went through the process and you're like, I want this. This is something I know that I want. I'm not only putting money into this, but I'm also putting a lot of like thought. This is not like it's like you know how society kind of just like, you have to become a parent. You really had to sit with that and think about, is this something really that I want, or is it just something that everyone's kind of telling me that I want? But going into that and like being able to know like, I made this choice, I wanted this, I'm happier for it even during the hard times, which is like the moments that are like the hardest, where you're like, I don't know if I really wanted this. Like you were able to say, no, this is hard and I still wanted this. Like all these cries, all the messy diapers, all the late nights, you're like, this is completely this is completely what I wanted, and I'm so grateful for all these hard moments, because I'd rather have all these hard moments with all the good moments than none of these moments at all.
Yeah. And even with your partner too, not every partner is all the way in. And like going through IVF and how much work it is, and he's coming to every appointment, every ultrasound, he's doing the shots. Like he's in it. He's working hard too.
Well, Gary, I feel like is an exception because while he may be extremely unserious, he's so supportive. And
He really is.
Like he's very involved. Like he mentioned on one of his TikToks, like, well, Autumn didn't leave me like a play-by-play, and I want to be like, she don't need to leave you a play-by-play of what to do while she's gone. But he's like, but I remember that Lordy loves apple butter. And like, he thinks that he doesn't know what he's doing. He really does know what he's doing. I'm seeing him with all his videos joking around. Lordy is well taken care of. He's complaining about you didn't leave him a list, which I will talk to him about later. But he knows exactly what he's doing. The baby has been fine. He didn't cry until he FaceTimed you.
Yeah.
Because he's
taken care of.
His schedule is going on exactly how it would have been if you were there or not. It's going great. And so Gary's such a great dad. He is so involved. And like it also speaks to why everything's going great and why you were able to be so supported through the whole process, because he's such a great spouse.
You know, when I was pregnant, the one piece of advice I got from a lot of women that turned out to not be true at all was dads are not as involved as you think they're going to be. I got that a lot. Dads don't hold babies. Dads don't change diapers. I remember hearing, what was it? Oh, he says he's going to be an involved dad, but what dads see as involved is not what moms see as involved. So to adjust your expectations. And when I tell you this man has surpassed every expectation, he blows my family members' minds. At Thanksgiving, Lordy had a poopy diaper, and he took him upstairs to go change the diaper. And my grandma was in shock. She was like, what did you have to do to get him to change that diaper? I was like, he just changes diapers. Like, that's what he does.
Oh, he's such a wonderful. I love it. I love hearing about men like that, because it means that the load is not only on mothers.
No.
Right? But it also means that these children will fare so much better having both parents be extremely involved, that they're not only solely relying on mom, but it's mom and dad. And that makes for better parents, but also better children in the end as well.
Yeah, I really don't feel like we have a primary parent in our households, because I work from home. He runs his business. We're both home so much that there's not truly like one primary parent.
And do you see from like the IVF perspective and parenting perspective, do you hear from a lot of women that are interested in going through this as like single parents, or where they don't have that same wraparound support, or like they know they will be the primary parent on the front end? Does that ever come up with your audience or with the people you engage with?
I would say, if I had to estimate, I would say most moms are going into parenthood expecting to be the primary parent, and maybe even wanting to be the primary parent in most cases. I do know a few single moms by choice. I don't know any that don't have any family support. Like generally, if I see a single mom by choice, they do have the support of like their own mother or their own family. That is a noble choice to me.
I feel
just the wake ups at night alone.
Yeah.
I can't imagine doing all of the nighttime wake ups.
It's so hard. I've had weeks where Drew's been gone for like a week, Gary. A week, like 8 days. And I remember waking up knowing like it's only a short period of time. And I did it. I woke up, the kids were good, all of it. But I was like, it feels so lonely. It really felt, even if Drew wouldn't be the person waking up with me, we're switching off. Just to have someone to just like, babe, again, penguins up again, like just someone there to just communicate. And yeah, I could probably call him, but it just didn't feel the same. That I truly respect single parents out there doing it all on their own, because it's not just like the physical part of it, it's the mental part of it, of just knowing that it's just you. Yeah. It's just you. And that's such a heavy like load to bear, of thinking like, it's just me. And I'm all this like child has.
It comes down to me. And I think there's women that are in partnerships that essentially the emotional and mental experience of parenting, it still comes down to that. Like they don't have a partner that is trying to help sleep train or support their child at night, or is like there for them taking off work when they're sick. Like if you're the exclusive parent doing it, even if you have someone, the same way when we full circle to what I was saying about sometimes sharing with someone is even more lonely, because you have like this little baby hope that by sharing you'll feel less lonely, but then they can't relate or they're not there for you in the ways you hoped. And it's almost worse. Like I think that can come up for a lot of women that are like, I have this other like co-parent or this other person, but I emotionally and in so many ways feel like I am responsible for this child's well-being, or I'm the one troubleshooting how to raise them and how to meet their needs. And it's profoundly lonely because I almost hoped, and people are kind of assuming that it isn't that way, that I'm not a single parent, but I feel like I'm a solo parent.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that is more common than anyone ever wishes it would be.
Yeah. Do you feel like, I'm sure, like, will you tell Lordy and this new bubby, like, the whole process of IVF and how they came to be when they're older?
Yeah, when it's age appropriate, for sure. And I mean, I've saved all of the news articles about the Starbucks IVF process for, you know, when they're older. I think even when they're young, I think when they're old enough to understand, like, what pregnancy
how
even
a baby's
is
made and what
like when I was pregnant with Lordy, my niece was 4 and she was her teacher at school was pregnant. And so she was obsessed with pregnancy. She would put her dolls under her shirt and come and show me and bring a doll out and say, I'm a mommy
So
now.
cute.
So like she really kind of understood that. So I think there's a point even when they're young that they understand that pregnancy equals a baby. And I think that's probably an appropriate time to at least introduce the idea of the doctors had to help us. Because they know what doctors are.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, there are so many books. I actually will share some books that I have that talk about pregnancy in such a less of like, not just mom and dad, sometimes mom and dad and doctor, sometimes mom and mom, sometimes dad and dad, and showing like the process, how different it can be, but it all bring like all the end journey is 2 parents or a parent bringing in this baby, being loved, and like a family, and how like I will share the book because it's one of my favorite books. It's actually Penguin's favorite book. He'll just flip through it, and it's just so nice because it's like a really great way to introduce children, like how children or babies are being like born, bring into this earth, and how there's so many different ways, and it doesn't have to always be unassisted conception, that there's so many different ways than just this way of everyone just thinks is like the typical or normal way.
yeah.
What's your, so even personally, if you were to share with someone, or for me who says like, oh, I guess my next step per my my gynecologist would be like consulting with a fertility specialist. If you were to share with someone a takeaway for you, or something that you would want someone to know on the front end, or just any of your thoughts about the IVF experience, what would you want someone listening to this podcast or someone coming across your story to know?
I would say even if you have questions about your fertility, if you have been not preventing pregnancy for a long time and nothing happened, just get the referral, because the first thing a fertility doctor is going to do is an ultrasound and a crap load of blood work that your OB doesn't have the expertise to do. OBs really are not experts at getting people pregnant. They're really experts at the pregnancy. And fertility doctors are not experts at keeping people pregnant long term. You know, they get you pregnant and then they pass you back. They have their own specialized expertise. Your fertility doctor is going to look at so much more than your OB will. And the actual title for a fertility doctor is a reproductive endocrinologist. So they're hormone experts. Like I would just say your insurance is going to cover blood work and an ultrasound. So if you have questions, just go and get all the information, so at least you know what you're working with. Yeah. Because you may not need IVF. There's a whole gamut of lower intervention options available to you. You could do a medicated cycle, where they're just giving you fertility medication to help you ovulate and like make sure you ovulate every month if you're not ovulating. There are things like IUI, which is like an insemination, where they're going to wash the sperm and inseminate you with it. Yeah. Those things are so much less intervention than IVF and are good options for a lot of people. But you don't know until you find out.
Yeah, start getting like numbers, start getting information, just make the appointment.
Yeah. I mean, I know one of the
hard.
procedures you do to prep for IVF is called an HSG. And you go into a hospital and they x-ray your uterus and everything. And they fill your uterus with dye and watch it go through your fallopian tubes to make sure your fallopian tubes are
cleared. Yeah.
And I know someone who was struggling with fertility for a couple of years. She got that HSG. They saw it was blocked, and they can clear that blockage in that procedure. It's not comfortable, okay? But they can clear your blockage in that procedure. She went on to have 3 pregnancies just fine.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Just identifying.
There are some relatively easy fixes that come way before IVF.
Well, I am so excited that you decided to come here, Georgia. Yeah. For our followers who would love to learn more about your journey and follow you on this like new journey because you're 11 weeks pregnant, where can they find you?
I'm on TikTok and Instagram as Autumn Hit the Jackpot.
Autumn Hit the Jackpot.
Because I have everything I've ever wanted.
Oh my God.
Before I had my son, I was Autumn Wants a Baby.
Aww.
Which I think you have another page, like your old page. Well, no.
I have a page called Autumn on Replay. I started that page like playing older videos. Like it was literally like a rerun, so to speak. And my husband got a hold of it and started posting videos. And now he kind of took it over.
Oh my God.
But they on that page, they can find all of your old videos of your process. So if they're really interested, they can find all of that there, right?
And I have playlists on my own Autumn Hit the Jackpot page of like the Starbucks IVF. I went into really deep financial detail during that time of exactly how much it cost, how much insurance covered, how much I paid out of pocket. Like we went really deep on the finances.
Oh, bless you. That's amazing.
I'm an open book.
Because that information is so inaccessible. So I really, really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. This was so nice.
You. This was amazing. I felt like knowing, so weird, even though I've never been through it, I knew a lot and you even taught me even more.
Yeah.
So I'm truly grateful for you being here because I know a lot of our listeners will be able to learn so much more. And so if they're thinking about it, you may be that person who's helped them like, all right, I'm going to take the bullet. I'm going to go to the doctor. I'm going to do this. I feel so much more prepared, maybe a little bit more, or feel less lonely in this process. So I'm just so grateful that you decided to come today.
Thank you. And thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it.
Okay, now that we've made it to me, I'm going to share. There's some research that was released recently from University of Cambridge about sibling rivalry and the positive impacts of children fighting with each other. This is really novel research. So I'm really excited to share about it because when I read it, the first thing that came to mind was growing up with 6 siblings. We had plenty of differences of opinion, personality, and sorry, parents, plenty of fights, plenty of contention and like disagreements and whatever. So this research stands out to me because it's something I think a lot of parents view as a negative. Is it's like, oh gosh, I must be doing something wrong as a parent because my kids fight all the time. It drives me crazy. I wish we could have a more peaceful home, or maybe I should be doing something to like help them get along better.
We were recently talking about this in my own household last night. And like, I'm wanting to foster better relationships between some of my kiddos because they are constantly fighting. And I'm just like, I'm over it in the sense of, I feel like the fighting is just getting to the point where I don't know if it's healthy fighting because I feel like there are healthy disagreements and it may be getting past that, but I don't know if it's just like preteen stuff of like wanting to pick on your siblings. And I'm really interested in hearing this.
It's really fascinating research. So they actually went all the way down to toddlerhood. So their sample size, I don't want to misspeak, 140 children were studied and all of them were in like low income households. And also 43% of the children, the mother had the first child while she was a teenager. So a very unique population that they were looking at, which I'm glad they did that so that it's amplifying that even youth that could have a multitude of things that you may be worried about would lead to unhealthy outcomes. They went there for the research instead of people that everything seems totally fine and then the kids fight. So really unique sample size that they were using and sample group. And what they found was that the kiddos, the toddlers that had siblings, their social skills were significantly developed when they would have interactions with older siblings where the older sibling was picking on them, the older sibling was challenging them, whatever it may be. And this is all within, they have little, we'll share the article as well. They have little parameters of like, no one's getting harmed, like no one's, but just for fighting, like constant fighting or picking on someone.
Bickering.
The younger child, there's vocal skills, like their vocabulary, how much they know, their confidence. What are you laughing about?
I'm laughing because I hear Penguin, no, stop that.
Yes.
No, I don't like it. I said no.
It's his little social skills.
But
yeah.
he's so good at it that it shocks me how vocal and how he's so good at it, like verbalizing what he doesn't like. But I don't think he realizes, I don't think I realized until you mentioned this, how much his older siblings helped him be so good at
articulate and like set good boundaries. That's exactly. And also siblings with one another, if they don't honor each other's boundaries, like that's a really healthy thing for them within a very relatively safe environment still to have to troubleshoot, to have to work through is you made a commitment to me and you didn't follow through on it, or we split the line down the middle of the room and this was the agreement and we're going to fight over the fact that you didn't keep your word and I'm going to hold you accountable, or that I'm going to go to my parents and complain that you pushed me or you called me a name. They're learning to advocate for themselves. They're learning how to, even when it's uncomfortable or there's like conflict, to do something about it anyways, and how to do it in environments that are controlled and safe helps them with the language to do so, the confidence to do so, the experience, and all of those things in their research continue to translate throughout their life. So these kids had better friend groups, better communication skills, better safety, improved boundaries, because they learned those skills of, I'm not getting along with my sibling, or you hurt my feelings, or you're driving me crazy. How do we articulate all of that and work through that in an interpersonal dynamic? And the reason this research is especially interesting is because there is some stigma around having siblings. Like it's a detriment to have siblings that are fighting with you. It must cause like insecurity, or it must be really bad for you to always be having someone picking on you or bothering you or calling out your worst traits or whatever.
It's Kelly Clarkson, and what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
I mean, and so this is cool research because they were saying, let's see if we can see if that's actually true. And what they found was the exact opposite. Like these children are thriving and they're developing really well.
Take away parents, let your kids fight.
Let them fight and intervene. Like, teach your children the skills of, I can hear that you're trying to work something out. Like, you've got this. Keep telling them what you need. No means no. Like, reinforce those communication practices that are helping them to learn how to advocate, communicate their needs, say their feelings, and not, if you're perceiving it as a natural, healthy, almost positive element of childhood, it can reframe for them as well. This isn't like the most annoying, terrible thing that we have to get away from fighting. Like, let's find productive ways to fight. Let's learn better ways in our household. It talks about in the article at the very end, the importance of family, household-wide discussions of conflict, of disagreements, of different opinions, and to hold almost like family councils, and how we can do that in a healthy way, and how beneficial that is to have to navigate those differences. My family did that all the time, and it was uncomfortable. It's long hours. It's awkward. And we're so much closer now because we held space for difference and for annoyance and for conflict. All growing up, my parents would, facilitate that and encourage it. And we all can articulate our thoughts a lot better now because we just had to hash it out and compete with one another growing up. And it turned out okay.
Well, one thing that I started implementing is like whenever I do date nights with my kiddos, one of my date nights, I was talking to Panda, and he was like talking about like me and Drew fighting, because we like the way we fight, it's not anything crazy or anything like that. But he's like, why do like people who like love each other like fight so much more? And I was like, it's not really like you fight so much more, it's like you're around them more, so you're going to it's just like probability, like the probability is going to be higher that I'm going to fight with like someone in my household than someone outside of my household, right? They're also these people are also people who, not always intentionally, but they may be people who just know your buttons, and they're not always going to be on purpose, but sometimes they're pushing it. And so he talked about, Panda and I talked about him fighting with his siblings, and I'm like, sometimes you may fight with your siblings, but fighting with someone does not mean that you don't love them. And I don't want anyone to like misconstrue what I'm trying to say of like, oh, the people who like fight with me are like maybe even something to more extreme than that. It's like, it's because it's out of love. No. It's respectful fighting, right? sometimes it just happens, but learning how to do that in a respectful way, that both people feeling like they're being heard, you come to a conclusion, you come to a compromise, that I think that is really healthy. And that doesn't mean like having a disagreement or fighting with our words, never like physically, can sometimes, it can also be like, I fight a lot with you and I don't mind fighting. Like it's not something, I like conflict sometimes. It helps me become a better person. It helps me like come up with new thoughts and stuff like that, because I'm like really trying to hear someone else's side, also express my side. And so Drew doesn't like it, I do, but I do it in a respectful way. That we've never come out feeling like someone said something that they could never take back. Which that was something that I was trying to explain to Panda. And I think if you're doing it in a way that's really constructive, it can be really beautiful. And so having that talk with them, and I from there had the talk with the siblings, that now they don't see fighting as a completely bad thing. Where someone was like, I don't like what you said, I don't accept your apology, I don't feel like you're hearing me. Like you hear all those words and it's so beautiful. Because they're not shying away from that. And that research basically shows me what's been happening in my home. Yeah,
they're learning how to engage. I mean, that's what it's trying to say. And I think the bottom line of it is, not as a parent or a caregiver, a role of yours can be not to try and squash down any fighting that's happening, but how to foster and walk someone through healthy ways to engage with conflict, healthy ways to disagree, healthy ways to express that someone hurt your feelings, or put up a boundary and say like, that's not okay with me. No, stop. Don't touch me. I'm leaving the room. I need space, whatever it is. Coach your children through that, but not with the end goal of being, we don't want to have conflict. I'm always trying to make it to where there isn't any. Instead, I'm going to say like, it's inevitable. There's going to be. So instead, can I shift my viewpoint to what are ways to like walk my child through this that will teach them the skills they need? Because they're going to have this the rest of their life. Conflict and disagreement and differences of opinion. So socially, these kids are going to be socially advanced. All these fighters out here.
I love it.
But the article's really good. I encourage parents to read it and caregivers, because it was insightful. It's short and it's insightful. It's good research.
Yeah. Well, we'll link it into the description, and then that way anybody who's interested, they can definitely check it out. We're so glad that you guys could be here listening and watching on this podcast episode. It's a very interesting conversation, and I'm so glad that you guys are here with us. See you later, Guardian Gangs.
No.